I'm going to speak in English, and very quickly, my colleague Daniela is going to do a translation, and then Crystal is going to explain to everyone how the translation is going to work for the remainder of the event. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Erica Robb Larkins, and I'm the director of the Boehner Stiefel Center for Brazilian Studies.
Bom dia a todos e todas. Meu nome é Erica Robb Larkins e eu sou a diretora do Centro de Estudos Brasileiros.
On behalf of the center, I want to welcome all of you, and especially our esteemed guests that have come from Brazil and from around the US to gather in honor of slain colleague Marielle Franco.
E em nome do Centro de Estudos Brasileiros, eu quero agradecer a presença de todos aqui hoje, especialmente os amigos que vieram do Brasil e aqueles que vieram também de outros lugares dos Estados Unidos.
Over the course of the last 2 days, we've held a series of events focusing on discussing racialized state terror in Brazil.
Nos últimos dias, nós tivemos alguns eventos para falar sobre
Racialized state terror in Brazil.
Yeah. Para falar sobre o terror do Estado, o racismo do terror do Estado.
Today's panel discussion will continue that important work, but will also bring into focus various forms of resistance to that terror, highlighting struggles to transform and change Brazil and the world.
E hoje a gente dá continuidade a essa conversa, falando sobre estratégias e militância para resistir a esse terrorismo perpetuado pelo Estado.
So it's an absolute honor for the center and also for me to be able to host this event and to be in the presence of such an incredible group of human beings and activists that are doing profound work.
Então, para mim é prazer estar aqui hoje à frente desse evento e estar na presença de pessoas maravilhosas que têm feito esse trabalho ativista.
So thank you so much for your presence, and I know I speak for everyone when I say that we're really looking forward to learning from the speakers this morning.
Então, muito obrigada pela presença, e eu sei que eu falo em nome de todos ao dizer que a gente está muito feliz em acompanhar o que vai ser feito aqui hoje.
Some thanks are briefly in order. First, I want to say thank you to the Center for Brazilian Studies team, Crystal, who has done so much to make this happen. Flavia, back in the back, as well as Amethyst and Isabelle as well. I also want to thank the departments that are co-sponsoring, including Africana Studies, Latin American Studies, Arts Alive, and the School of Art and Design.
E os outros departamentos que estão ajudando a apoiar esse projeto, então o Departamento de Africana Studies, o Departamento de Latin American Studies, Arts and Letters e Arts and Design.
And I also want to say a special thank you to 2 colleagues from the University of California, Santa Barbara, the fabulous Jaime Alves and Leo Fortana, and to UCSB Black Studies for also its sponsorship and assistance with this event.
E eu quero agradecer também aos colegas da Universidade da Califórnia, Santa Bárbara, especialmente ao Departamento de Black Studies da UCSB. Gente, é muito UC. A pessoa 10 horas da manhã já não lembra. Da Universidade da Califórnia, Santa Bárbara, especialmente ao professor Jaime Alves e ao Leonardo Conrad.
Yes, without them, there would be no event. So thank you so much to both of you. I think Crystal is going to say a very quick word about the tech, and just for those of you that are listening on the headphones. So please, Crystal.
Então, a Crystal vai falar pouco sobre a tecnologia da tradução simultânea com os aparelhos para vocês. Não vai ser muito interessante porque vocês não estão ouvindo em português.
Hi, everyone. If you would like simultaneous interpreting in English, we have wonderful interpreter Diogo, who is on Zoom. And if you can get a headset here, I am happy to show you how to use the headset to adjust the volume. There will be a delay because Diogo is doing it live. So he listens and then speaks the interpretation. And that's part of the process. So if you have any questions about that, I'm going to be right there. And thank you for coming.
Does the Zoom room need to know?
And
Does the Zoom room need to know how to do that?
yeah. And if you're joining us on Zoom, at the bottom of the screen, there's an interpreting button where you can pick between English and Portuguese. Para quem está junto com nós no Zoom, na parte inferior da sua tela vai ter botão que diz inglês ou português e você pode escolher a sala de português para poder assistir este evento em português. E, obrigada.
Thank you, Crystal. And so now I want to invite my colleague, Dr. Gladys Mitchell-Walthour, who is going to introduce our speakers. Dr. Mitchell-Walthour is an associate professor and the chair of the Department of African and African Diasporan Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She is a political scientist specializing in Brazilian racial politics, and her work examines Afro-Brazilian political behavior, affirmative action, Bolsa Familia, and racial inequality. She is the author of numerous articles and also of the book, The Politics of Blackness, Racial Identity and Political Behavior in Contemporary Brazil. She is also well known for her leadership in the profession and for her own activist work, serving as Brasa president from 2018 to 2020, and currently as the co-coordinator of the US Network for Democracy in Brazil. And so it's a great pleasure that she was able to join us. And I invite you now, Gladys, to introduce our speakers.
Então, primeiro, obrigada para Erica.
Thank you to Erica and everyone because of this event. Just for me, it's so special and it's an honor to be here with these wonderful women, Débora, and their work is so important, and so to meet them is very, very special for me. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And now I'm going to speak in English.
Débora Maria Silva is the founder of Mães de Maio and a researcher at the Center for Forensic Anthropology and Archeology of the Federal University of São Paulo. She is the mother of Rogério Silva, a victim of state violence in Brazil. Débora has received several national awards for her work as a human rights activist, including the National Award of Human Rights by then President Dilma Rousseff in 2013. Débora has been an organizer of the Global Network of Mothers Resisting State Violence in the Americas. Currently, there is a campaign to grant her an honorary degree in recognition of her contribution in saving Black and poor youth lives in Brazil. And next we have Mônica da Cunha. She is an anti-racist activist and human rights defender who has worked in various non-governmental organizations as an educator and coordinator of social projects. She is the founder of Movimento Moleque and is a member of the Commission of Human Rights of Rio's state legislator. She is the mother of Rafael da Silva Cunha, a victim of state violence. Mônica has faced many death threats and assassination attempts due to her advocacy work against police violence in Rio's favelas. She has been one of the most prominent voices against Bolsonarismo and paramilitarism in Rio. Just yesterday, Mônica has been appointed to take a seat at the City Council of Rio de Janeiro, the same chair that Marielle Franco occupied before her assassination. And last but not least, we have Rute Fiúza. who is the coordinator of Mães de Maio, Nordeste, and a human rights activist in Salvador, Bahia. She is the mother of Rute Fiúza, a victim of state violence in Brazil. Rute is also a researcher in the Harvard Project on Violence and Mothering Politics in Brazil, and one of the main voices against state violence in Northeast Brazil. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and get started. Débora. Aqui.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning, everyone, and every gender. Good morning. My name is Débora, as has already been mentioned, and I am a founder and coordinator of the Mães de Maio, May Mothers movement. We are very emotional and happy to be here in San Diego, bringing a lot of information about what state violence in Brazil is like as a whole. And also, we also need to thank this event, the courage that this department has in the person of Erica in bringing Brazilian mothers, poor mothers who live in the favelas, to scream also here in this empire that we need to stop being killed, stop killing us. And we are here to say, stop killing our sons, because the bullets that kill there are the same bullets that kill here. And I also want to say that this team, was a very engaged team. You are all really, I need like to congratulate you, all of you, because we can't do anything by ourselves. We need to have a good team for anything to be organized as it should. And we really fostered a lot in this country, in this region. And I'd really like to thank Jaime as well, this son that we loaned, so to speak, so that we are able to stand, because the pain that we have when we lose a child is something hard to, where mothers are the ones who really hide this and keep this inside. And Mães de Maio was born in the state of São Paulo after a massacre, a week-long massacre of over 600 young people, most of them Black, from 15 to 29 years old. None of the police reports and none of the investigations ever led to any sort of accountability. So unaccountability is what really reigns in Brazil. So we need to give birth to a new society in our country and throughout the world with a commitment to occupy academy, decolonize academia, because we need theory to not just be in favor of capital, but also in favor of the transformation of people, of subjects, to change the world. We can only change the world if we can transform ourselves into subjects, people who are active. It's not just books that tell our history. We tell our own histories. We're the ones who speak for ourselves. And we need to speak for ourselves, because in our country, there's no justice. In our country, we have a racist system. We have a classist system in which white judges, they make the law. They are the law. They maintain the system of oppression that leaves us in the gutters, in the peripheries, in the favelas. And they're the ones that make it so that the blood of my son runs, and the blood of Black people and the blood of poor people is running through the streets, and they don't get the chance to go to academia and to higher education. And what we get is just like we're treated like beggars, and that's not what we want. We want equality, and we're going to fight for this equality that we need so much, because the struggle of the mothers movement, the Mães de Maio movement, it's a different kind of struggle, because we're fighting for our wombs. The fruit of our wombs was ripped from our lives because of the state, and it's a different we didn't go after being just an activist or a militant. We have a mission as a mother. I think mothers are the ones that are going to be behind any revolution. We need to globalize our struggle, because they are globalizing when it comes to killing us, and we can't accept this, because this connection of extermination of Black people, this is global. This is a global phenomenon, and we can't accept it, because we've been in this country. Sometimes we know what we're talking about here. We're trying to create a global network, but we are poor mothers. We need opportunities. We need it so that academia and in this country also gives us opportunities, so that our children can leave the gutters, can leave the hovels that they live in the favelas, so that they can have another opportunity, because my country doesn't give us opportunities, because there's no reparation for slavery in our country. This is done, the reparation is done by rifles and by pens in the judiciary and the legislative. They're the ones that do not give any kind of justice like we would want as mothers, because the state does not have the right to take away the lives of our children each minute, because into 2015 it was every 23 minutes, and we challenged it because it's unacceptable to have over 83,000 forced disappearances in our country in what we call white democracy. So we need to fight for real racial democracy, a democracy in which white people shouldn't have the the power to speak over everyone. We do want white people to help us in this path, because otherwise we won't be able to fight against structural racism, because blood is structural racism feeds from the blood of our children, and we just can't accept that anymore. So we don't come to other countries to take selfies. We're not taking selfies to put on social media. We want to transform this mindset, this mentality, this terrible, horrible mentality, fucked up mentality that exists, that says that theory is above practice. Theory has to be, if you have theory by itself, that's just for capital. That just feeds into capital, the capital that kills Black people in the favelas, in the slums. They feed from the bodies of our children. So we want theory to be practical. When we were received inside the universities, we slammed into the door of the university. They didn't give us flowers, but they used us as a laboratory for their theses, for there's over 200 different dissertations about us, and especially the ex-prosecutor of the Republic, Raquel Dodge. She has a PhD thesis telling the story of our children, telling the story of over 600 kids who were murdered in a week. And then she comes to the general prosecutor's office and she doesn't do her homework. She puts her research, even we weren't, she didn't copy and paste this. She actually did this research. We were right by her when she did this, and she didn't honor her PhD thesis that she wrote on top of our children's blood. So we challenge intellectuals in books that don't tell the real history. We have written 3 books and a book of articles to be able to feed into an alternative media, not this corrupt media, not this commercial media, but an alternative media that brings true stories, true histories, and the fight for human rights in Brazil. So we're talking about this kind of media because we also have a course, a communication course that we graduated in, because we mothers, we don't have academic degrees, but this theory left us so intelligent about what happens to academia when we were helping students, that we occupied academia and said, now we are the researchers. We've researched into the crimes of our children because we couldn't accept copy and paste anymore. And just like an intellectual that has a PhD thesis about this, but doesn't do a thing about it. But she was white. So whiteness, being white, as much as it might be trying to be good, it has to work practically. We want white people who are partners. So we really like to congratulate the center, because to discuss and bring in the diaspora, you can't just say, oh, I'm sorry, and want to talk in my name and talk in the name of the Black people in Brazil, the Black people around the world. You can be a partner and let them speak for themselves. Because if you knew what we were able to do, we translated, we got some support in Harvard to translate the memorial of our children. We don't want to have a memorial for our dead children. It's a memorial of our live children. The memorial of our dead children is here. It bleeds. It bleeds. This heart, it's not overfilling with rage, but it is overfilled with the transformation of people. Because all of you, young people, when we see young people, we have the hope of a better world that might be possible. Possible through practice, walking hand in hand inside every opportunity in academia, inside our country and outside our country, because we have seen that fascism has increased a lot in our country, but it already existed. The virus only came to take off the mask of who was the actual virus, like our goddamn president that we have. He was never be my president. The only president that I'm going to say that is ours is when we mothers give birth to a new society and we occupy those ministries and say, this is all ours. This is not yours. We have to take it from the front line. Thank you.
Muito obrigada. E agora nós temos a
Thank you so much. And now we have Monica.
Bom dia a todos e todas.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure that we'd be very much satisfied with my friend and colleague's speech, Débora Silva's speech, because what she said right now, that's our true story. That's the history of our country, of our streets in the state of Rio and São Paulo and Salvador, Bahia. So what separates us among the three of us is the states that we have: Rio, São Paulo, and Salvador in Bahia, because the practices, sadly, we can say that without a doubt, they are the same. Anyway, since I was already presented by my wonderful friend, Gladys, my name is Mônica. I am a technician in education in the state of Rio, Mônica da Cunha. I am very proud of saying that I am Brazilian and that I've lived in, and that I was born in the state of Rio, despite having all of these violations, all this violence that happens to us. And I'm going to keep on struggling there because before I think in wanting to fight in some other place, I need to really fight where my home is because that's the place where I identify with. That's where I was born. That's where I'm from.
De ancestralidade, obviamente que não.
I'm going to talk about ancestrality. It's not. I am a Black woman. My ancestors came from another continent, but that's where I was conceived. And that's where I desire to raise my children, my grandchildren, and great grandchildren. And I want it to be a better place because I believe that it will be. And because I am a Black woman, I had 3 wonderful children. I have Marcos Vinicius, who's 40 today, Wilbert, who's my youngest, he's 28, and I have Rafael, who's here. Rafael da Silva Cunha. Look how beautiful he is. He was 20 years old when he was murdered. And if he was alive, he in September 2022, he would be 36. He became a teenager. I don't know if you all know this name in Portuguese, infraction act. What does that mean? That's a teenager that commits a small crime. Teenagers who they have socio-educational measures that are applied to them, that are imposed on them based on the crime they've committed, the act, which is not a crime if you're a child. That's inside the Penal Code of Brazil. So a child or a teenager, they aren't born becoming an actor of a crime. They become them. And in my country, and especially in my state of Rio, this is a day-to-day thing, more than you might think, because we have the lack of human rights, the lack of opportunities, a lack of existence, which having a goal, what was the real reason why you become a teenager who has committed an act of infraction or a crime, and they don't understand. And I tried to go after information. I didn't know why my kid, why this happened to me, and based on this, I I started engaging myself to a struggle which I didn't even know about. First, in the units where he was going through this social educational measures, and once I knew what was the law that actually governed this and these measures that are applied, I ended up finding out that inside my country, we had a ley called the Child and Adolescent Statute of Rights. That's the first thing that I really start to understand. And then I realized that that federal law, it didn't actually work as it should. And I asked myself, why? Isn't it a law? Doesn't it need to be respected in my country? We have a constitution from 1988 in which it says we are citizens with human rights. So how don't we have those rights as children and teenagers? Well, anyway, the laws aren't imposed for us because in my country, Black people aren't seen as humans. So if they're not humans, they don't need to live inside the regime of laws. So the child and teenager statute is not fulfilled in these teenage units, which are something like teenage prisons, because of racism. They don't actually follow these statutes. So when I discovered this, I started talking to other mothers. And just to show you something really quick, I'm really proud that how I had the statute. I knew how to read and write. So I read that, and you can think Isn't that just normal? You can read and write? No, not necessarily in my country. Not really, because there's a lot of people who are actually illiterate. But being illiterate in my country doesn't mean that you are 100% illiterate. You can be what we call functionally illiterate. You can't really read and write, but you can do really good in other situations. So I was in these lines with mothers like me in these correctional units, and I realized that most of them had the same skin color as I did. They lived in the same kinds of neighborhoods. I lived in the north side, but we have favelas all over Rio. And so I started to read together with them and understand with them the statute, the Children and Teenager Statute of Rights, in relation to what it said in relation to social educational measures. So there's an agent, usually a white man, who realized that there was a movement going on in the door of the units, and he said he gave me a notebook and a pen, and he said, if you have any questions, you can write it down and I'll explain it to you. And that's when we were first starting the Moleki movement. But I didn't know this at the time. We were learning together about how we could take our children away from those places. And until then, we understood that it was all our fault. Oh, I gave birth to a criminal. How? The doctors, the doctor when he was born, he just said he's a male. He didn't say he's a criminal. He's a thug. But that's the guilt that we carried, because the system says it's your fault. You're the one who gave birth to this little thug. You're the one who gave birth to this seed of evil. And so from then on, there's this rock in the west side of Rio, in the unit. I mean, some of you who know what I'm talking about, who have been to Rio, in the west zone. I went up to this rock, and I talked to people and I wrote down their questions, and we started. And with this, starting with this, Movimento Moleque has existed for 20 years now. When they realized that we started to understand, and we didn't need to come from universities or to even have a high school degree or have a very fluent formal Portuguese for communication. No, we just needed to understand. We're the ones who gave birth to these children. So who's actually going to know our children better than us? The system? No, that that's not true. So then they realized this, and what was the first thing they did? I wanted to do was taking my child away from there. And so since they thought I was the leader of the gang, maybe if they took my child away, that movement would, fizzle out. But that's not what happened. I I was still in the struggle. I might not be every day there at the door trying to get my child back, but I was interested. Why? Because I realized how many women were there as well. Those of you who go to this line in a social educational measure unit, the correctional unit for teenagers, are the women, are the mothers. We're the ones who are there. So I got interested in this. Okay, let's try and understand why this is. And then I started to walk around inside my state in some different places, because until then, I didn't really understand about this. I started talking about NGOs. I wanted to go more in depth. I wanted to know more about the meanings behind this. I started to reading books by Black women like Carolina Maria de Jesus and others. I don't have bell hooks. I was reading these women and understanding that what they were writing, that's our lives. It's about us. Even 500 years from now. And that's when I understood that when I was studying, and in my history books, we had a little figure of a Black person with cuffs. And I thought that was all. No, that's not all. I realized that we were never actually freed from slavery. that abolition was a fallacy. And that's when I started to really take trips to other states and realize that that didn't happen just in Rio. It happened all over Brazil. And I also realized, together with other people, that we'll be able to change. And what weapons could we use? Information, empowerment, knowledge. So based on all of this understanding, you can go into university, you can continue your studies. Obviously, that's great. That's your right. But if you don't want to go to university, that's fine. That doesn't need to be an obligation. I'm really, really happy and very satisfied of being here in this place, of having been invited by Leo to have, because I met Jaime, to be here together with Erica, together with these wonderful women. Flavia, Daniele is here. We have a long, a long story together because of Instituto Crioula. We have a wonderful movie maker here. I'm really happy because you all have, it's great to be able to come here and speak with love. But going to university shouldn't need to be a rule. We just don't need to listen to people just because they are graduated in this or that, this intellectual formation that they have from this intellectual institutions. We need to listen to others because they are humans. This is called human rights. Because we as human beings can only continue living with others. We don't constitute ourselves by ourselves. And existing movements, well, because we in Brazil, in Rio, Sao Paulo, Salvador, or anywhere, we're not the first mothers movements that exist. The first is called Mães de Maio. Those of you who don't know, well, now we have Google. Google knows it all, right? It's the eye that sees all. It's all on Google. You can check it out. They are the first mothers movements fighting for the lives of our children. And if today we're here, and they were here years ago, but they also left Brazil and talked. So today we are sadly continuing this story because unfortunately it shouldn't be that way, but we're here fighting, of course, with what's happening today and technology in the moment, but we're still here resisting living. And based on that, based on all this knowledge, I became a reference in our state when we're talking about human rights. But not just human rights that I saw when I first came in, which are people bringing in human rights from the church, especially in the Catholic Church. And I'm not against that, no way. But what I'm saying very directly in relation to my state, that it's been too long for us to talk about human rights for those people who actually built the country. We Black people. If we don't talk about human rights when we're talking about racial issues, then we're not really talking about human rights, because the ones that are getting screwed every day are us. The ones that are getting killed, the ones that are getting thrown in prison every day are my children, are my grandchildren. That's the kind of human rights we need to talk about. These people. And so the more I became a specialist, because that's what I've become in this position, this point of view, I started occupying different spaces. Our NGO started uh, organizing different social projects, organizing different professionals to work with these people, in which I coordinated the human rights commissions of the state of Rio's legislature. So 22 years of work in this area, in which all of this knowledge that I've been accumulating also didn't stop the state through its armed forces from assassinating my kid, 22 years old. He died like that. They shot him in a rifle in his stomach, and his body was just dropped to the floor. But I started to understand that that body that dropped down to the floor in December 5th, 2006, was just a body that fell to the ground because Rafael da Silva Cunha, my son, who I had given birth to, who I had given birth in September 13th, 1986, that one, they started killing him when he was put in a unit due to the infraction he committed. And they didn't make him understand or make the family understand what the actual infraction was. Much to the contrary, they changed him so that later they could drop his body to the ground. And when we have a body in the ground, society as a whole doesn't care. You know why? Because he's a thug, he's a criminal. Who cares about criminals? Who cares about black criminals? Just to make that clear, because white criminals, people say, oh man, I wonder if he's actually did that. He was in university, he's such nice clothes, he's white. How is he a criminal? But no, if a person's black, oh no, he was born for this. He's a little seed of evil. We had a governor in my state, which is something very sad. The last governors of our state are all in prison. And I'm a little bit ashamed of my state. And none of them are black. All of them are white. And they have, light eyes and their curriculums and their university degrees. Some of them even went to Harvard, but they're all in jail. It might be because of Harvard. I'm actually a little bit scared to go to Harvard now. I don't know if the water there is good. You know what I'm saying? So one of these governors, the one called Sergio Cabral, he said that from the womb of black women in my state, you are born a criminal. Can you believe that? He said that I gave birth to a criminal? And so I went to prove to him that wasn't the fact. And it didn't even go and say to him, look at you, look where you are. Did your mother give birth to a criminal? Why? Because I don't want to say this to his mother. She's not the one, she didn't give birth to a criminal either. She didn't. None of us give birth to criminals. He was a racist, Sergio Cabral. And so, since I am like a woman who used to clean his house, well, then I didn't give birth to a human. I gave birth to a criminal. But then he proved that what he did was build prisons for our children, and now he's in one of them. And so what we can't, there's certain things that we can't see here, but well, he's in the prisons that he built so many. Anyway, all of this knowledge, all of this information, all of this research, I went to a research that's called a study that's called Elemento Suspeito. It says a lot here about how my state, and I helped in the study. It talks about how the state treats us as soon as we're born. If you're born black, it doesn't say that, oh, everyone, you can have all these titles. You can even be a PhD. If you're black, that doesn't matter. Thais Araújo, an actress, I don't know if you all know this, a famous actress, also married to an actor, Lázaro Ramos, and she has 2 kids, a son and a daughter. She says, she's rich and she can take her children to school by a car. But she's really scared because they would get to a certain age, their children, I know that Erica has children. Well, there's a certain age when they don't want their mothers to take them to take to school or anywhere. Please don't take me to school, and they have to go by themselves. And she said the biggest fear that she has is that they're black and they're be going by themselves to school. And so maybe what they should have a sign on their foreheads. My name is this and that. I am the child of famous actors Thais Araújo and Lázaro Ramos. Is that the way that they're gonna have to walk around? Because if not, they're just black kids walking around, and that's dangerous. And that's the absurd. When you have racism, you don't even have social classes. You don't have even your titles, your intellectuality. What happens is the skin color. But obviously, if you're in a lower class, then you go through double prejudice. But that doesn't mean that if someone in Ipanema or Leblon, which are neighborhoods which are very fancy for rich people, if you have a rich black person, an artist, football player, soccer player, but they also go through racism. Sometimes the police might make a police approach and to frisk them, and then maybe the police will say, "Oh, aren't you a player? Aren't you a Flamengo player?" But he's already given him, a couple of slaps before that, and then after that they'll let him go. The number of young people who were arrested last year in my state because of what? Because they were talking, hanging out in the street, because they were hanging out by their gates in the street, because they caught a cab and they were arrested. They're arrested for being black. And then how do I actually, if you go to prison, then you have a kit. It's called a criminal kit. They walk around with a little backpack to incriminate kids. And then if you have a black kid and you have a backpack with drugs and weapons, then you can say you found it on them and you can arrest them. You don't need to explain anything else. You don't need any other evidence. You just plant it on them. So we're not discussing drug policies or life policies. We're not discussing opportunities. We're not discussing existence. What we have in our country is a genocidal policy from 500 years ago to now, perpetrated by a politics of death. Oh, now we have this or that governor. Before him, we had Wilson Witzel. Before Cabral, Garotinho, all of them were the same. It's not just the governors, it's the system, it's the politics and the policies behind this. That's the real reason behind them. It's not just that face in power. It's a system that gives continuance to these policies. And when I got all of this information, I thought it was time to, well, I'm still a victim's mother. I still have a very sure foot in where I was born and where I came from. My name is Mônica da Cunha from the state of Rio, a black woman. I had 3 children. I've worked a lot and I went to a lot of crowded buses. I have been humiliated many times by bosses. And I had a child murdered by the Brazilian armed forces. I can never forget that. I lost a child because of the state. But in 2019, I became a candidate in the PSOL party, the Socialism and Freedom Party, which was the party of my sister, Marielle Franco. So she had the opportunity, sadly, she was an elected city councilman for 1 year and 4 months because unfortunately her life was taken from her because she had this position. But she was a woman that while she lived in that place, she showed us how important it is and how necessary it is for us to be in places like that, in a political party, in parliament. We need to occupy these places if we want, in fact, to change things, because that's where are the people who have the pen to sign laws. So we'll have more strength to put pressure on them so that this pen can work for us instead of against us. Are social movements necessary? Completely. Without them, it's completely impossible to change things. But we also need to occupy these other spaces like parliament. And so, where she was, she lost her life because she was a woman, because she was lesbian, because she was black, and because she fought for human rights and for racial equality. And her struggle, most of it is like I do with women, because we believe that it's not just in Brazil, in any other country, changes will come from our hands, we women, because we're the ones who actually know the price of bread, the price of milk, what it's like to actually stay up taking care of children, what it's like to be in lines for healthcare, public healthcare. I know you guys don't have public healthcare here, but healthcare in general.
Eu fui ser candidata a vereadora pelo município.
So that's why I became a candidate for city councilwoman, and I became a substitute councilwoman, and now I become a full city councilwoman, and I will become a city councilwoman of the city of Rio de Janeiro.
Que vai estar num lugar como estou aqui hoje.
And so there will be other people from the movement coming here to showing all. We're going to come in with a lot of people, all the people as a group, us, Black women, those of us who are not well represented as far as quantity in representativeness, but we actually represent the majority of the country. We've all heard of the stadium called Maracanã, and now we're bigger than Maracanã. I'm just talking about the mothers of victims of violence, of state violence. So that's how we're going to be reaching the city councilwoman. But this is just at first, because we want a lot more of us in the city council and other places like that. And so to be here for me is an accomplishment, of our struggle, is an accomplishment of empowerment. And it's the legacy that my child left me, and that today he is together with Marielle Franco. And to be here in these lands, I never thought that I'd ever come here. So this is a huge accomplishment. And I don't even have that dreamed diploma that you have, but for me, that's not what's important, because I feel equal and I'm very intellectualized like anyone else here in the university, because my intellectuality came from pain and it was forged in the struggle. But here in this place of equality of knowledge, that's where we can walk together. And I'd like to thank you all once again, for all of you who are here, and always saying what my great friend said.
A gente não está parindo outro país no qual
We
só
come into another country. We're not just living as victims. We're giving birth to another country for a new state in which everyone belongs to this new country. And I want to see my children and my grandchildren sitting down in a communion, in a community, without people looking at their clothes, at their hair, at their skin to judge them. So that people don't come and ask us, what are you doing here? I'm here because I want to. It's my right. That's the meaning of give birth to a new country, with a lot of emotion, with a lot of struggle, with a lot of resistance. Thank you so much to all of you.
Muito obrigada. E agora nós temos Rute Fiúza.
Thank you so much. Now we have Rute Fiúza. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm a little bit speechless after the speeches of Mônica and Débora, who are two women who are immensely representative in this area of human rights and who are very respectable women who became respectable because of this path of struggle that we've been in together. And first and foremost, get out Bolsonaro, out Bolsonaro. And I'd like to say that I'm very happy, Erica, to be here. So I'd like to thank you and thank Jaime, who is one of our comrades and a man who's always bringing a vision to talking about the struggle of mothers and bringing us to different places where people can know a little bit about what happens, not just the idea, and so that this can open doors. And I'd like to thank immensely to this research center, Erica Larkins, because of the invitation, and say, Erica, that yesterday when we were in the other room, I looked at you and I was thinking about your posture, your idea of bringing us, and some things about you and Crystal and Flavia, Daniela. I heard Daniela speaking and I couldn't help but fall in love with this interaction that she has. But Flavia, since you are the person who is in the who is directly responsible for the center, I looked at you and I remembered a text from Angela Davis in which she says, it's necessary to be anti-racist, combat racism. And we see that in you. So thank you for being an anti-racist person. As far as my life trajectory was a trajectory like many Brazilian women live, the vast majority. I was born in a city which is the blackest city outside Africa, from the city of Salvador, Bahia. Very well known because it's a beautiful city and a city in which many famous people like Mick Jagger, Michael Jackson recorded video clips, Paul Simon, among others. It's one of Snoop Dogg's favorite place. He's always smoking some kind of thing there. And there's a very wonderful place called Gamboa, very wonderful neighborhood. So this place called Gamboa, it's a paradise, and it's a place where the low-income population lives. Even though it's very beautiful, it's almost like a paradise. The low-income population lives there, and there's a real estate interest in that place because around there you have huge artists like Ivete Sangalo, the singer, the ex-mayor of Salvador, the politician Assemi Neto. So this area called Gamboa, which attracts a lot of people from all over the world to do their clips and everything. We had 3 murders before I got here, 3 kids who were cowardly assassinated by the military police of Bahia, by the armed forces of Brazil, the military police. So in Brazil, we have a brutality, which I don't know if it exists somewhere else, a police that's so cowardly and murderous like Brazilian police. And it's a police that's extremely racist because when people like Snoop Dogg are there in Gamboa smoking his little cigarette, so to speak, and drinking, he's a king. He's a big artist. But if he leaves that, right after he leaves that place, then the police will seize that place for a search and apprehension, a search and seizure of drugs. And so right now, the Gamboa is going through a very difficult moment, which is police invasions and murders, and there's a reason behind it, and that's real estate speculation. That neighborhood is worth millions and millions atop of billions. And so white, powerful people they don't want to let people like me, Deborah, and Monica living in such a wonderful place.
Assim como em outros locais também. Quando eu entro
Much
nessa
like
luta,
in other places as well. So I joined this fight in 2014, and I already knew about the state violence, but I didn't actually feel it in my life because we're very empathetic people. I came from a home of Black women, of women with solidarity. I was I was raised with my grandparents. They say oftentimes these people are look better, but they're also a little bit spoiled, but they have this positive vibe, so to speak. And I know that being raised by my grandparents, if some of you don't know your grandparents, I'm really sorry, but you lost something wonderful, which is having grandparents. It's a different kind of love. And my grandparents have left us, but I'll keep them in my memory forever. And these people, my grandparents and my great grandmother, they were women with solidarity at that time, and they took other women. Can you imagine that in the 80s? They took women who had been tortured, women who were prostitutes, and that no one wanted to know about them. They're single moms because there was a lot of prejudice. Even if you think about it today, we still have so much prejudice in relation to homosexual people, Black people, and so many others. Imagine in the 80s. So these women, if they got divorced or if they had a child out of wedlock, they were sent out into the street. And my grandmother and my grandfather and my great grandmother, they put these people inside their homes. And my house was always a terreiro, a center for African Brazilian spirituality. We come from our forefathers and mothers in Africa. We know that when we came from Africa, slavery was one of the worst things that ever happened in mankind. One of the worst things and the most rotten things that humankind has ever committed. But when they brought people from Africa, because they didn't bring in slaves. When they stole and then enslaved these people, they had doctors, scientists, teachers, and they enslaved them and took them naked in these ships. They were naked because these lords were scared that they might have a weapon if they had some clothes on. And so we know that they had to go naked. And so my home, ever since I was 5 years old, sometimes there's a word that's in Brazil, it's called macumbeiro. It's a little bit pejoratory. It's a word for practitioners of Afro-Brazilian religions, and I come from Candomblé, and I've always known myself as a Candomblésista, someone who practices Candomblé. And we have this religion that comes from Africa, and it also suffers a lot of prejudice. We constantly have Candomblé terreiros invaded by military police in Rio, in Bahia.
casos,
We know a
inclusive,
lot of cases in the state of Rio. A lot of cases there. There's a sanctuary, a terreiro, and the friend of mine has this terreiro, and there's journalists who are organs. They are like priests, let's say, something like that, a role inside Candomblé. We have women who were arrested, and they destroyed one of our most important items, which is the House of Eshu, which is the Orisha that opens paths. He's the one who stays ahead of us and opens the paths. And they destroyed our sanctuary. And so I come from this kind of people, people who have empathy, religious people, people who revere our ancestors and where we came from. And during this period of my life, in 2014, there was a police operation in the neighborhood I lived in. And that day, 23 new police officers had graduated. That was the day that they had the first day as military police. And it was something like they needed to prove themselves to become a military police of the state of Bahia. And my kid was 16 years old. He went out to buy some bread. He had some learning disabilities, and he never came back home 8 years ago because the military police on that day, the government of the state of Bahia on that day said that they needed to torture a black body to death so that those 23 policemen understood how you torture someone. And they took my child to be tortured to death. And not only that, but they disappeared. His body disappeared because they, and we haven't found it for 8 years. The more, even though we've done tons of DNA tests, we still haven't been able to locate the body. The family, because it's always us. I was the one who helped with the investigation in order to charge the authors of the crime, but none of them have been arrested. And I needed to leave the state for a whole year because the police was after me. So the state wanted to kill me because they killed my child and I was investigating, but I'm alive and I'm going to keep on living to fight for justice, for a better world, because that's what I believe in. I believe in the collective. The individual struggle won't bring us anywhere. Individual struggle is only for the ego. We're only going to reach somewhere through collective. It's together that we're strong. By ourselves, we're weak, but when we're together, we are a lot stronger. And so, after this period, I was very lonely, but people and women, my people from the Candomblé religion, my friends, my allies, they held my hands and we became seeds and we become activists, thousands of people working in this cause, people who said, well, I wasn't going towards that path, but now I want to fight for something. And they start studying about what activism and human rights is, what human rights are, what de-incarceration means. So now I'm also a part of a national de-incarceration agenda, which is also a very important part of slavery. The prisons were built to imprison certain specific people. That's why they create so many maximum security prisons, because they have a kind of body they want to arrest beforehand. But anyway, that's another issue. So we need to also de-incarcerate our population. Another issue, I was also a member of the Black Coalition for Rights. I was one of the co-founders, together with other people like Mônica, Donis Belchiar, Bianca Santana, and others. We are co-founders of the Black Coalition for Human Rights. And I'm also a co-founder of the Mães de Maio movement of the Northeast, which is the movement of mothers whose children have been disappeared, as we say, by the state. They haven't disappeared. The state has made them disappear by force. And so we are constantly talking to people. We don't lose any opportunities to talk about our situations, about how young people need to understand what's going on when they leave their home. I'm really scared of my children leaving the home. My kids, whenever they leave, I'm scared that they won't come back. And so at this moment, now I'm a researcher in a university in the Unifesp, which is the Federal University of São Paulo. And we have a study. We're finishing a study together with Harvard. And I was thinking about this place, academia, the university. And we took so long to be able to access this space. It's a space that for us to occupy it, it's like we're not good enough for it. But when it was for people to come and write articles and studies and theses, oh, that was fine, because that makes their academic curricula be richer. So we don't want to just fill out your curricula. We want our own academic resumes. We want our children to be in these states as well. We mothers also want to occupy these spaces. I am very grateful to everyone who's here because you're giving me an opportunity to come to different places. And I think it's great when people invite us to speak in a space like this. And I know that's already a kind of compassion, but we don't want just compassion. We don't want just empathy. We want opportunities for our children to study so that they don't become victims of our genocidal state, this murderous state, so that they can also move freely and so that we can break with this hierarchy, which is poor people are going to continue being poor. The mother of a disappeared person, well, her daughter will also have children who are murdered. And so their daughter, and now I've been able to access the university because of the struggle, because my child was tortured. No, we need help so that my child, who is a journalist who graduated, so that she has an opportunity to do a master's and a PhD, to come here to San Diego, to go to Santa Barbara or Harvard, anywhere, so that later my child doesn't come to these places and that people are just empathetic and compassionate. It's great, but then you keep it in your memory for a few minutes, a few hours, but people forget. What we need to do is to break this slavery state, this racist state, this homophobic state. How do we do this? Through education. Education is revolution. Education is revolutionary. We need grants. We need stipends. Mothers also want to study. I'm also a woman who wants to study. I'm a woman who is alone for a year trying to learn English, and it's very hard. So I know you've heard me say good morning, and that's what I learned. It's really hard. It's hard to learn. So we need help. And that's basically what I wanted to say. I'm very grateful for all of you being here this morning, listening to us. And now you could be doing something else. You could be outside. You could be feeding the turtles. You could be at McDonald's. You could be doing anything else, and you chose to come here. You wanted to be here because this is important for you. And this issue in relation to our lives, the education of our children, we need opportunities for Black mothers, Black women, that this also is feasible in this space and all other spaces, not just this space. So I wanted to say this to Erica as a thank you, but also that if possible, you can open doors here because we also have something to share so that we can interact as well. We have a lot to give and we have a lot to learn. And that's why we're here, because education is what frees us. We're ready to share with each other, not just to share our pain, but also to share affections, because we are people made of affections. And even if the struggle is tough and the pain is incredible, even then we are love, because we are children of love. We're not just children of pain, but children of love, because with love, above all, love can win. You can speak the language of men, but if you have no love, let love be bigger. But we need to share affections, companionship, and love. Thank you very, very much.
Bora. Companheiros, me ajudem, eu não posso andar só. Eu sozinho ando bem, mas com você ando melhor. Companheiros, me ajudem, eu não posso andar só. Eu sozinho ando bem, mas com você ando melhor. Vida negras! Vida negras! Vida negras!
Black Lives Matter. The song was "Companion, Walk With Me." I can walk by myself, but we walk better together.
So thank you again. I really enjoyed all of these presentations. They were excellent. One thing I do want to mention, because of this conversation about really integrating the academy with activists keeps coming up, and I also heard it yesterday. So I do want to just briefly mention the U.S. Network for Democracy in Brazil. Because this organization is based in the US, but we work with a number of activist groups in Brazil, and a number of the people in it are professors at universities throughout the United States. Do you want me to stop?
Yes,
Okay.
Muito obrigada por estarem aqui. Eu queria só trazer uma palavra, porque a gente trabalha com o projeto Raça pela Democracia, e esse projeto é formado principalmente por professores negros e pesquisadores aqui dos Estados Unidos.
Yes, so US Network for Democracy in Brazil.
Okay. Então é a Rede Americana para a Democracia no Brasil.
Yes, and so within that group, we have a committee that focuses on Black rights, Black Brazilian rights.
E aí dentro desse grupo a gente tem comitê que foca especificamente nos direitos da população negra no Brasil.
And within the group, we have actually talked about exactly what some of the speakers have talked about, connecting academics with activists so that they have educational opportunities.
E aí nesse grupo a gente tem debatido exatamente isso que as participantes falaram, que é a necessidade de conectar ativistas com intelectuais para que haja as oportunidades de intercâmbio educacional.
So later I can share the information with the group, but I think it's really important that you all get this information so that we can go ahead and make these connections.
E aí depois eu vou partilhar essa informação com as participantes, mas eu acho que é super importante que todas e todos consigam essas informações para que a gente possa criar essas conexões.
Okay, so now I think we're going to go ahead and take questions. So will we get those from Zoom, or do we want to go ahead and just have questions from the audience?
Agora a gente está abrindo para as perguntas. Ela só está perguntando se as perguntas vão vir do pessoal que está no Zoom ou se a gente vai abrir para o público aqui.
Okay. Okay, so I can start with a question. I would love to hear more about what you all see for the future of Brazil, especially just given that elections are coming up in 2022.
Então ela vai trazer a primeira pergunta para vocês, meninas. Ela quer saber o que vocês veem sobre o futuro do Brasil, especialmente porque a gente está nessas eleições de 2022. Eu vou pedir para vocês falarem os parágrafos pausados para que eu possa traduzir, porque senão eu vou esquecer.
Agora a tradução vai para você.
Tá.
Você pode ficar
Tá. Pode falar normal, que eles têm aí as maquininhas. Segue a maquininha.
Mas eu acredito mais nela.
Pode.
Sim, pode.
Pode ser daqui ou nós vamos dar?
Não, pode ser.
Vocês pensam sobre tudo.
Pode ser daqui?
Sim.
O futuro do Brasil. Enfim, né? Esse ano é ano de eleição no meu país, né?
This year is an election year in our country for president.
Esse ano de eleição no meu país, né?
So we have an election year for presidency and also for Congress people and senators and governors. So for governor for my state, for Rio de Janeiro, yes. So for Rio de Janeiro, the governor wants to take care of everything. So we've been talking with the previous governors are all imprisoned.
governador no qual
The governor
ele é o vice, o Witzel, que assumiu em 2018,
Witzel that was instated on 2018, who was heavily into the arms lobby. He advocated taking aim at people's heads. He's um,
onde são os 17 mortos.
he's responsible for the massacre of 17 people. So, and he said, this is what you voted for. But also with his agenda, fascist agenda, he was also removed from power by several movements that were there representing Black lives. Several Congress people, local politicians, including Dani Monteiro. At the time, she was 24, 25 years old, that were together with other council members, that we were together removing Witzel. So Cláudio Castro was inaugurated. He gives continuity to the agenda of his predecessor, Witzel. We continue struggling. He wants to be elected. He wants to be elected, and we're struggling against that. So we have someone that comes from the human rights arena, trying to have this agenda present and making it a priority. So we're also in a national mobilization to elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva as president. Lula has been president, and he was also removed by Brazilians. So for us to be able to govern, we need partners. So we have noticed that this mobilization is very important. We have to make him accountable for what he did correctly and incorrectly, not only nationally, but also locally. We have to think about how flexible youth is. So we've had dialogues, meetings with social society, with civil society. We'll be together, but we're going to have to really ask for coherence, because we need to, because we know what happened last time. We will bring people to sit together, people from an institution, from popular movements, to sit together and share their knowledge. So this time around, we are betting on coherence. We know that it's not easy to remove Bolsonaro from power. We know that since Bolsonaro was inaugurated, we know that they feel like they have limitless power, and it's going to be hard, but we're going to be able to. But to end Bolsonarismo, the ideology that Bolsonaro brings, we will. That's a bigger challenge. So we will. They say that the LGBTQ population needs to leave the closet. This population of Bolsonaro ideologues, they need to go. That's the future I can see. A lot of reconstruction. My country needs to be rebuilt. My state. Those who know more than just the beaches of Copacabana and Brazilian butts, we see what happened to the city. Carnival because of virus, because of the mayor, Eduardo Paes. Yeah, he considered the virus is gone and the mask mandates are being dropped. That's it. Our they're not my governors. I didn't vote for them. We work on a daily basis. We have to rebuild history. And we have to sit together. You know, my friend, my sister. I have a lot of evangelical family members. It was really hard at the end of 2018. So what are we gonna do? Can we just break up with the whole family? We have to rebuild these alliances. We have to rebuild. I'm rebuilding my country. It's there. I want to continue to struggle. I want to come back and visit. We need to create these alliances around the world, around all of these issues of racism and housing. But we need to reconstruct a new country because I want to leave them a new country for my descendants.
Nós, como movimento Mães de Maio,
we, as the movement of Mothers of May, we alert the serpent's nest that was coming along, but the left wing in our country, they did not hear us. And the left, to be able to occupy power, the left can't be incoherent. The left wing needs to be redrawn in Brazil because they gave birth to this monster that is in power, but also they gave birth to these monsters' babies. They're even amongst our relatives. They voted for Bolsonaro. Family members broke up. Family in Brazil became a, a, a place of struggle and fighting, which really disassembled our family structures. We were able to convince some nephews about this posture that they were adopting. Maybe because they wanted to be armed, but to become armed is to be a coward, to carry a weapon. And how do we see as mothers this partnership that Lula is drawing? We also, it also threatens his election, because he is coming together with a governor that was responsible for one of the biggest massacres in the current history of our country. Because if he doesn't control the police, because the election in Brazil costs lives and black blood, black lives and black lives. And Lula is trying for a re-election with Governor Geraldo Alckmin, was attempting to become president at the time in the last elections. And he wanted, and he needed to show that he had power against organized crime. So he tried to show his power against organized crime, but he didn't have the power. But the PCC, this organized crime faction, was created inside the prison system, and our children were executed because of this kind of people, this rebellion that has happened inside the country. And it was they got the prisonal system, they kidnapped family members of the imprisoned to receive money back. They wanted these people who were imprisoned. This is what feeds the Brazilian prison system. The country, Brazil, the country that is the third country in prison population, and it was a police force that most kills, one of the world champions in killings. Lula was silent about the massacres that happened. Me, as a mother, I am proud to represent these women. And other women sometimes may not be able to scream, but I scream for these dead people. This connection between Lula and Alckmin is not going to work. We're imprisoned by the mourning we feel for the rest of our lives. And the agents that needed to control who didn't control. And we believe in not punishment, but we're penal abolitionists. Brazilians voted for Lula, but we see that the police cannot be used like it was by the right wing. So we can't have a romantic notion of Lula as the savior of our country. Lula suffered the military dictatorship, but he still fed the system, this security system. For example, during the World Cup, it's hard. It's hard to be a mother whose son who was sentenced by the police, because it's not different from those who instated the coup d'etat against Dilma. We told Dilma this could happen in 2013, that the dictatorship had not ended, because we who live in the favelas continue to live under a dictatorship. But we were not heard, we were not seen, our screams were not heard. I don't believe in this partisan system. We occupy and we give people good trouble, but it's hard to see after 16 years, more than 600 youth assassinated in a dispute of power for the country, and everyone was silent, including Lula. And then we see in the reproduction of the massacre of Jacarezinho, everyone was horrified by the governor's declaration that the police forces were acting in self-defense. As a mother, I saw Lula saying that these police acted in defense. We will vote for Lula. We voted for Dilma because she was a woman, she had gone through the system, but I do not believe in a left wing that is what we have, a left wing of the ego, a left wing that fights for certain interests. I believe in a left wing that learns with the coup d'etat that happened. Not a left wing that wants to give a coup d'etat against our Black people who want to fight against classism, racism. A democracy cannot happen without racial democracy. That's it. See? My vision is that we're going through difficult situations anywhere. We need a period to deconstruct what's given. I believe in Brazil. I love my country. It's one of the most beautiful people. Our people are a good people. I really root for Brazil to work out in some time, and that's why we struggle. We fight the good fight. We talk to people because I believe in it. I believe in Brazil. I believe in the strength of our youth. I believe in our women. And I hope that whoever is elected, as long as it's not Bolsonaro, the right wing, but Lula coming with his alliance with Alckmin, I think it's very strange. I don't believe in it. I feel that people are forgetting. You know, Dilma had an alliance with Temer, and Temer inflicted the coup on her. People forget, but I hope that Workers' Party is restructured, the left wing is restructured. He is a great statesman, and I root for the reconstruction of Brazil. We are a nation of the future. We are a beloved nation. In the same way we respect other nations, we deserve respect because of our history, our culture. But we are good people, a beautiful place. We have pleasant people. We love to hug. A lot of people in the world don't like hugs. But Brazil will be, I am sure. Maybe I won't be around to see it, but we will be a great power. I have no doubts. Do you think the program that was the program Mothers of Brazil will bring negative or positive changes for women and mothers in Brazil? We don't even need to answer. I don't even have an answer for that because nothing that comes from Bolsonaro is valid, is good. How can anyone be stupid enough to believe in him? It's a great happiness to have you here. Because you're able to transmit your reality. My question is this. I've been thinking about police violence. Most of our military police are Black people, especially in Rio de Janeiro and Bahia. Have you been able to approach them? They're most of the military police are Black. Have you tried to establish dialogues with them? Listen, it's a very pertinent question, very important question. 2 weeks ago, we had a course on the police. We don't believe in the police that's given because there's no reform is possible. We struggle for the end of the police because we need our freedom. This police, there's no way to dialogue with the police because they are not workers for Social Security. It's they they can't be workers who are torturing, making us disappear. They're killing us. We don't accept their status as workers. So the end of the police is our agenda for our movement. My dear Luciano, I agree with my colleague. But I had to deepen my relationship with this place where I am. I became I didn't choose this position. I was put in this position, but I chose to be connected to a political party And to be in this place,
ser vereadora,
I won't be a councilwoman
nem das mães que eu represento.
and or for the for so I will be a councilwoman for all of the population I represent, not just for the organization. One of the problems of these council people
Em algum lugar de sua moradia de sua infância,
that
são eleitos, eles só querem
they want to advocate just for a specific neighborhood or category.
filho, avô, avó, e aquilo vai. E já é uma aliança, Então, isso a gente,
So this,
quando entra, e aí, eu digo a gente, nós, negros,
us black people
quando esse lugar não é de
who are occupying this place, not just today, but at this moment,
de Marielle, isso é real.
but
Meu país, eu venho de
in my country, I come from
Jurema Batista,
I come from a tradition of Jurema Batista, Benedita da Silva,
mas foi a partir da
but
Marielle,
it was from Marielle on
estouro aí. Não só de mulheres negras, mas
that
negras também.
we had this moment of Black trans women that started to have representation in Congress and in local councils. So we have to understand the situation that you raise, Black policemen. Am I going to kill them all? No. Of course, as a mother of a victim,
Quem matou meu filho foi um policial.
the person who killed my child was a policeman, two police.
É para mim comungar enquanto mãe,
So as a mother,
pauta. Mas enquanto
I have this agenda, but as a councilwoman
vou me tornar,
that I will become,
tenho que de fato
I have to understand these places. I also had the opportunity that to get to know some police people,
entendeu, Luciano? Bem pouco.
some members. There are very few of them who are anti-fascist,
Antirracista,
who are anti-racist,
trabalho
and they do work
desse lugar.
to try to change
Não sei se
from
eu
within.
nem você. Olha que eu não estou dizendo, você deve ser mais novo que eu, mas
You're younger than me. I don't know if I'll see this change.
aperfeiçoar meu bisneto
Maybe my great-grandchild will see this change because the institution, the police institution,
de racismo
it's completely infiltrated with racism because of the way it was built,
da segurança pela
because
segurança privada, pelo
of
material.
the way of that public security is structurally
Então,
established. So they see us as things, and what they do to us comes from that.
para dentro dessa instituição,
I have been in these institutions,
entendeu? Já fui, sim. E discuto com essa parte.
and I establish a dialogue with this
A pandemia na UERJ,
faction. So I went, for example, in the State University of Rio de Janeiro,
4
to some law students,
não negros e 2
and
negros.
there were 4 students in the front row. 2 were Black, 2 were not,
Desci, bateram palma.
and they applauded me, and they came up to me and they introduced themselves, and they said, "We're from the military police. I want to thank you
Pela sua fala, pela sua
for what you said, for your courage. I'd really love to have your courage."
Aí eu tive certeza absoluta
So I was absolutely sure that of this pressure,
que é isso.
because I know, because
Aquela fardinha,
when they put on their uniforms,
ali eu sou a institucionalidade.
there they are at the institution. I'm not your friend, I'm not your neighbor, I'm the institution. I do what the institution tells me. That's their position. Is it hard? Yes. It's a position I'm familiar with. It's going to be hard. In the human rights committees, do you receive the wives of the policemen, the partners of the policemen? Because I know Marielle, when she was in this committee, she was criticized for hearing out the wives of the military policemen. Yes, yes, it's real. It's, you know, a place I've been in for 8 years, and it's somewhere, and it's there. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. These wives and these mothers of military police. So we have a movement called the coffee of the strong ones, coffee meeting of the strong ones, mostly. But in this space, we have mostly Black women, and we know most. Outside of the massacre that happened with the children in Costa Baja, that those who stood up to fight were men. This was exceptional, but mostly it's women rising up for the struggle. And from this, the coffee meeting of the strong women, we go around different favelas with the public prosecutor's office. So we did a coffee meeting with mothers of police force members. So we had the two sides of the coin, mothers of victims and mothers of police force members. The pain is the same. We're both mothers. The pain she feels is the pain. It's the same pain, whether you're the mother of the person who killed or the person who was killed. It's not an easy meeting, because when I approach these people, at first I approach them as institution, as the Human Rights Committee of the City Council of Rio de Janeiro. That's after we establish a report, we start to talk about what we're doing. They open their eyes. But you know, as mothers, we end up hugging because we understand they're also Black women. So I started to understand, but it's not easy. It's not an I don't come at this in an ingenuous way, but as someone who is a defender of human rights, that's my place. I defend human rights for all humans, and I have to deal with all of the population. I'd also like to say that the movement of mothers, there's also a mother of a police Force member in Amazonas who was killed, a female police officer who was killed inside the battalion by her co-workers. So we support the mother, but not the institution. And there's a song by Gilberto Gil that talks about Blacks who are fighting and hitting other Black people. We see a lot of victims of the state because they're not considered terrorists because they're institutional. The police is the strong arm of the white man to protect the property of the white man. When we talk about reforming the military police, we see that it's not going to work. It needs to be broken up. The state does not want an encounter with the population. There's no possible dialogue. When we talk about people who are part of the institution, that's another thing. I don't believe in anti-fascist policemen. Or don't talk to me about anti-fascism if you're in the police force. I don't believe in it. If you want to be an anti-fascist, leave the police force. Give your badge up.
A lot of professors and students have to go to class, so we're going to have to end now. But we encourage you all to continue the conversation as we have on the patio. Again, I would just like to thank all of our panelists.